Good morning. Welcome along to episode 3 of the AardvarkJoke podcast. I'm joined with, as always, by Mr. Peterson.
Good morning.
What have you been doing this week, Mr. Peterson?
I have been doing Key Stage 2 level crosswords.
And I'm, of course, Ed Podcast Jing, hosting this. Topic for joke writing this week. Obviously, the Euros are in the news a lot. That's the football, not the people from Europe.
Or the currency.
Yeah. You're a more cultured man than I have. When Euros are made up of 100 smaller divisions, I sometimes see that written as cents, and sometimes see it as written as centimes. I didn't know if there's like an official name for it, and centimes gets shortened to cents, or if it's country by country based on their language.
I would suggest centime comes from the smaller denomination of the French franc, which was a centime.
All right, not a francime.
No, centime, like cent being French for 100.
That makes sense.
And
like the Roman centurions.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they did have Roman centurions in France back in the day, didn't they?
They did.
The Roman centurions, they got around a lot, actually. Anyway, we're talking about the football.
If you want to find out more about Roman centurions, there's a very good documentary called Asterix and Obelix.
That does sound good. There's also a very good source of information called the World Wide Web. So there's lots on there. You'll be able to find what you need, which is good. Anyway, football. I, like a lot of people, have been proudly singing, optimistically and naively so, that football is coming home. And as you correctly pointed out, there's a number of issues here, such as what do we do if football does come home?
It's a big problem.
It is a big problem.
Because football hasn't been home since 1966. I assume we then gave football away in 1970, so it probably was at home for 4 years. But I was just wondering, is it like the class guinea pig situation where everyone has to look after football for a bit? Or do we trust one central person as custodian of the football?
I mean, that is a good point. I mean, obviously, plenty of people online have made jokes, certainly at the moment, with the pandemic, about if football does come home, they'll have to quarantine for 14 days upon entry. Kind of linking it to the migrant crisis and stuff. If football comes in, Priti Patel's gonna, I don't know, send it home or refuse it entry or return it to the nearest safe country. All of those kind of topics, I think have been covered. But that 1970 point you make, I think, is key, because no one, someone, it might maybe Brazil or someone, I'm not aware of anyone winning back-to-back World Cups. And also, this is currently football coming home in the Euros, and because of it being delayed from 20 till 2021, football could
that also means we will potentially get to keep football for less time.
Well, yeah, because I mean, does football leave at the next Euros, or does it actually leave at the next World Cup? Probably the World Cup. What is the export policy on football? I assume it's VAT exempt, as it's a concept, but globally the world's in a lot of debt. So if you can start taxing, concepts, metaphysical concepts, ideas, or just anything that goes across borders, such as migrating birds,
good
weather systems. They often come over from Europe, completely ignoring any sort of international boundaries.
Saharan sand.
Yes, yeah, all the way from Africa. That's a long journey. I don't actually know.
That's going through at least 2 or 3 different tax jurisdictions.
Yeah, the stuff that flies over Luxembourg's got a lot less to worry about. We have to go direct from Luxembourg to Ireland and then into the UK like that. But no, there's a lot of concerns here with and I think that what do we do when football has to inevitably leave again is something that no one talks about. So I think that's where the real where the comedy is. That, or in the fact that you're going to have a nation with football not really potentially knowing what to do with it. Some sort of, I don't know if it's going to lead to some sort of football focused state. I've got up a few quotes here from famous dictators of World War II, just to see if, because they were very big on the nation as a concept, and the nation being one large unity. And I don't know if the concept of football being back with us is going to give us something to kind of gel around. So I thought I'd read out a few quotes, replace the key words with football, and maybe see if it gives us any way to go of. We'll start with most of these are from an Italian fellow. And this one's quite good. 3 cheers for football. 3 cheers for the UK, obviously Italy, the UK's football, and 3 cheers for football in general.
Well, is it going to be the UK's football, or is it specifically going to be England's football?
Well, it's going to be English football, isn't it? So actually, that might cause a big rift with the other nations.
But I could see we could have a parade for football. I'm sure.
Yeah, some sort of Borat Kazakhstan style thing where the UK Prime Minister is looking at the leader of the Welsh Assembly saying, "You'll never get to this." And
I've got a plan. There's parades happening in London. There's the 4th plinth at Trafalgar Square. We can just put football up there.
Can't we not just build a bigger 5th plinth, which is sort of 10 times like the Great Pyramid of Giza is next to 2 medium-sized pyramids?
We could just hand football to Nelson. And just put the football at the top of Nelson's column.
To be fair, if we did win the Euros and someone sort of London way, not graffitis a statue, but sticks a papier-mâché arm on of Nelson or someone holding the football, that probably would make news of being quite entertaining. But yeah, the exporting of football on the other side, when we eventually don't win another major tournament, because I'm going to put this out there,
the next major tournament.
I'm not confident we're going to win every single World Cup and European Championship
for the rest of the time.
No, I actually don't think that will happen. I don't want to sound like a naysayer. So I think that is going to be difficult to achieve.
What happens if we don't give football back? Will there be another tournament? We'll just keep football, and then there won't be any other tournaments.
I mean, I did have a mate once who couldn't make a night out, so he told everyone else it was cancelled. So if we just start cancelling every other tournament, we'll sort of have won it from the last tournament, so it will still be ours, sort of by default. That might, really damage the game of football in general.
So I think probably actually, I think we should give football back, and I think when football comes home, we should give it back. But I think the inspiration here has got to come from one of the finest thinkers of our generation, Mr. John Barnes, where he starts his seminal piece of work going, "You've got to hold and give, but do it at the right time. You can be slow or fast, but you must get to the line." So I think what that really means, ignoring the last line because that's gibberish, is we've got to hold on to football, but we should give it back at the right time, slowly, so we could ship it out somewhere on a boat. Or
much more environmentally friendly than aircraft.
Or fast, we're helicoptering it to the final of the next bit of football, one or the other. So we got options here. But yeah, I think we've established that keeping football for ourselves, selfish and probably wouldn't work, but we could give it a go quick. We could do part of the holding first, and then if the holding doesn't work, we can just give it back quickly, and then John Barnes will still be okay with that.
I can't tempt you out of that line of thinking with another quote. Football is definitely and absolutely opposed to the doctrines of liberalism, both in the political and economic sphere. That hasn't dissuaded you from your prioritisation of Barnes over all other philosophers.
No, and it also hasn't really helped with the situation of how we export football.
No.
So
Not at all. Not at all.
I think we're going to have to seek a VAT exemption for football.
I think that is critical.
And I think it's also going to have to, however football arrives at the other country where we're giving football to, it needs to go down nothing to declare, because I'm sure no one can be asked to do all this paperwork.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah. The airports are quite empty at the moment as well, obviously, because of the kind of travel ban. So,
yeah, but we're not giving football away yet.
No.
We're going to have it for at least a year when it comes home.
We will. What's the most ridiculous thing people have ever had to try and export? Because obviously it's really tempting just to go down a kind of Brexit line of joking with this. I mean, like, well, what if we try and give football back, but France has closed their borders and all that kind of stuff? Or Europe won't let us, give them anything. But because you do, like, occasionally you hear like really odd stories historically where Bill Gates bought a car and it was in customs for something like 25 years before he could get it out. It was like a niche Porsche or something because it didn't have a road equivalent. It couldn't be certified for American roads or something like that. I remember hearing a story about that when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we think of the shipping conditions, I think no, I can't. There's some way where you just deliver it, and the person who accepts it has to sort out all the tax. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, they pay for fees because really rich people who buy art and that kind of thing. Sometimes it doesn't actually enter the country; it stays in the customs holding area for £1,000 a year or something.
Well, that's not a bad idea then. What we're saying, we're going to keep football in England, but we're going to basically let whoever has football invest in the football in England. They're going to have an offshore investment in football.
They can invest in football coin, which is uses of blockchain.
Thus, we don't need to export the football in the first place. Is that what
that's
saying?
The thing?
We're just offering someone a chance to invest in football, but they don't actually get the football.
Yeah. Or they could maybe invest in like parts of football. Like you don't have to buy a whole share. You just buy 0.1 footballs.
You can buy one of the hexagons.
You're really poor just for stitching. I don't think that's the solution to all of our problems here. Actually, is those like the people who buy art for hundreds of millions and never actually enters the country. It's technically it is within that country's territory, which would mean football would come home. But for legal reasons, it's still in processing, so we don't have to concern ourselves with any of these issues.
So I think we solved it then. I think the solution to exporting football is we just let someone offshore into football, and then we don't have to deal with any sort of customs. We're not necessarily holding and giving at the right time. We don't have to worry about that.
No.
I think
I think that might be the root of the joke, to be honest. Just because
I think it's there, and I think there can be comedy out of this.
Because that's the kind of what we've done here is set ourselves up an absurd premise, but we found a quite accurate and real life technical solution to the absurd premise.
And we've quoted one footballer and one dictator. So
yeah. But no left backs, obviously. So it's not a complete set of quotations yet.
Cheryl Cole's well fit. Ashley Cole probably said that at some point.
Yeah. She used to be involved in football in some way. See, it touches the lives of everyone. Yeah, I'm just trying to think how to phrase that now.
We're gonna let you. Is this the time where you disappear off into your joke writing space?
I think this is probably it. Yeah, I think we've covered a decent number of concepts there. Right, we'll pause it there, and we're back. Joke
5
time.
hours later.
The good news is, and I learnt this by walking down the street and hearing some people chanting it loudly. I say chanting. They would say singing. I'm not convinced they would win many singing contests. But the critical message was that football is coming home. And my first question is, where specifically? I mean, I Googled this, or all the search engines are available, and it said football was invented in Britain. Now, I'm pretty confident if I had a postcard and wrote Britain on it, the Royal Mail would be highly unimpressed at the complete lack of specificity as to where it had actually originated from, which may actually not be very much use at all. Obviously, the second issue or problem, not that I want to seem like I'm creating problems here, I'm just trying to outline some of my concerns, is that when football does come home, how much import tax do we have to pay on it? Is it import tax exempt? Is it 20% for goods and services, 45% for metaphysical concepts, or just concepts in general. Again, I'm not a tax expert, but if there isn't a form for it, it could get held up in customs for even longer, which would really be quite annoying. And then obviously on the back of that, Marcus, how do we export it again? We're not going to win every European Championship and every World Cup from now until the end of time, or the inevitable expansion of the sun that consumes the earth. So we've got to be able to export it again. And I don't know how we do that. My concern is that if we get again stuck down in legal red tape and we can't export football, the football's going to become very stationary. And then it might become sort of misshapen and covered in moss and flies. It seems to happen to a lot of ex-professional footballers when they stop moving around all the time. Again, I wouldn't want to, be 80 years old, go and see football in the museum, and it looks like a bag of Spanish. So to try and solve these problems, I thought I'll go to some of the great philosophers of Western society. I started with famous dictators from 1930s, 1940s. They didn't really help me out. So I went for Mr. J. Barnes, notable scholar. And in one of his seminal texts, he says, talking about the topic of football, you've got to hold and give. So I think what we're really talking about there is Schrodinger's football. And if we can't both hold it and give it simultaneously, then I don't know what we're playing at, really. I mean, that's a nice and simple solution. And I very look forward to both holding and giving football simultaneously in the future.
Bravo.
Right. Mr. Peterson, is there anything you'd like to add at the end of the podcast?
There is nothing I'd like to add at the end of the podcast.
Cool. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.